The Jesuits, an order founded about 400 years ago. For much of that time, the Jesuits have been controversial. It's been said, plant a Jesuit and you harvest a radical. Today, the Jesuits are still controversial, as James Compton reports.
The commonly held belief among the conspiracy research community is that the Illuminati was formed in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt. But this is actually not true, as Weishaupt's version simply added illuminated degrees to the existing Masonic structure. From information Weishaupt had obtained on behalf of the Jesuits from infiltrating Masonic lodges for the remaining information the Templars fled with to Scotland, where they set up Freemasonry. The Jesuit order, otherwise known as the Society of Jesus, has been the military enforcement arm of the Catholic Church since it was first founded by General Ignatius of Loyola of Spain in 1534, during the reign of Pope John Paul III to fight against Protestant heresy. Many feel that the Jesuits are only a sub-order of the Catholic Church and are merely seekers and disseminators of knowledge, but they have a much darker history that many people are not aware of. Before founding the Jesuits, Loyola was a member of the Alumbrados, or the Illuminated Ones. The Alumbrados held the belief that the human soul can reach such a degree of perfection that it can, even in the present life, contemplate the essence of God and comprehend the mystery of the Trinity. All external worship, they declared, is superfluous, the reception of the sacraments useless, and sin impossible in this state of complete union with God. Persons in this state of impeccability could indulge their sexual desires and commit other sinful acts freely without staining their souls. The ancient name for Babylonian mysticism was called Illuminism. The Babylonians who were initiated into the mystery religion were said to be in possession of illumination, or the inner light. Supposedly, this meant that they had been enlightened or aware of the fact that they were gods. Through the Jesuits, this illuminated teaching was co-opted and corrupted and has been the real agenda behind religion to this day. Their goal is to bring about a new world order of darkness, hiding in the light of religion. These are the holy warriors who will stop at nothing to keep mankind ignorant of the secret knowledge, and their general is the Black Pope.
Today, the Jesuits are still controversial, as James Compton reports.
Pope John Paul visits a slum neighborhood of Rome. The Pope, while committing the Church to a vigorous program of social action, has said there are strict limits Catholics must not overstep. The Church must not ally itself with leftists. The Church must not become political. But others have a different vision of Catholicism's social task. Archbishop Oscar Romero, assassinated in El Salvador last year. He had told soldiers that insurrection was justified when peaceful efforts to obtain human rights fail. Many churchmen believe aggressive social action is the true job of the Church, even if it sometimes leads to violence or death. But Pope John Paul has his own ideas of social justice, and he has singled out the Jesuits, the largest, best educated, and one of the most politically active of the religious orders, for a stern reprimand and a review of their worldwide activities. His action on the Jesuits has triggered new criticism that the Polish Pope does not believe that diversity within the Catholic Church is one of its strengths. Jesuits have been ordered to abandon public office. Father Robert Drinan, anti-war activist, first to file a bill of impeachment against Richard Nixon, resigned his seat in Congress on direct orders from Rome.
As a person of faith, I must believe that there is work for me to do which somehow will be more important than the work which I am required to leave.
But it is the activities of Jesuits in Latin America that have most deeply concerned the Polish Pope. He traveled to Mexico to remind the Church to focus on spirituality and caution against depicting Christ as a political figure involved in a class struggle. Jesuits have allied themselves with Marxist guerrillas in Nicaragua and El Salvador. Jesuits have been imprisoned and tortured in Brazil for political activism. Even as the Pope finished speaking, he was seemingly contradicted by the head of the Jesuit order, Father Pedro Arrupe, a militant Basque priest who has headed the order since 1965. Arrupe said there were times when violence might be unavoidable in the face of tyranny. Arrupe has now been paralyzed by a stroke. Pope John Paul shocked the Jesuit order by appointing his own personal representative, Father Paulo Deza, a conservative non-Jesuit, to rule the order until a new leader can be elected. An election could take several years. Young men in training to be Jesuits sing a folk mass in Rome. It is yet another symptom of the unorthodoxy in ritual and dress that have disturbed the Pope. A certain focus of reform will be Jesuit education, which, despite its reputation as the finest the Church offers, has upset the Pope as too worldly, too liberal.
We're called to work with the people, and we're called to be shepherds. And shepherds smell like the sheep. So don't ask us to go back into our monasteries where we're safe.
St. Ignatius.
And shepherds smell like the sheep. So don't ask us to go back into our monasteries where we're safe.
St. Ignatius Loyola founded the Society of Jesus in the 16th century in a church troubled by corruption and Protestant dissent. Ignatius, whose death mask is preserved in Rome, sought a society of reformers, totally obedient to the Pope. The order grew so effective, so sinister even to some, that one pope in the 18th century suppressed the Jesuits for 50 years.
Jesuits are proud that no pope or politician has ever managed to completely harness the Society of Jesus. Jesuits believe the order bounces back stronger than ever from attempts to curtail its independence. James Compton, NBC News, Vatican. In the year 1534, on a hilltop in Paris, Ignatius of Loyola formed a religious group which became the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. Over the centuries, their power and independence have concerned many popes, and now Pope John Paul II has chosen a point of confrontation. He called Jesuit leaders to Rome to discuss politics. James Compton reports.
Pope John Paul, in his repeated assertion that trade unions are a legitimate right of the Polish people, in his constant call for an end to martial law, has become an important actor in Poland's continuing political crisis. The Polish Pope believes the Church should preach the gospel, but never take up weapons, never enter alliances with parties or factions.
The Pope has warned Catholic priests that they have no place in politics. He made one resign from the U.S. Congress, and he has singled out the Jesuit order as a prime offender, particularly in Latin America.
That seems inconsistent to some prominent Catholics, like Englishman Hugh Kay, who edits a Jesuit magazine.
I would certainly say that I think he's being thoroughly political over Poland. I'm very glad that he's being political over it, and I think it is inconsistent to try and hamper what the Jesuits are doing in South America accordingly. Let us get away from this idea that politics has to be a dirty word. It is not.
If there is any Roman Catholic religious order that has found its members in the vanguard of political action, it is the Jesuits. Respected for their learning and versatility, their law schools and universities, yet feared sometimes as an almost sinister intellectual force. Some have openly studied the theology of revolution in Latin America. But now the Pope has called them to Rome to explain that their mission must not slip into politics. Meeting the Jesuits privately, John Paul reminded the order of their special vow of fidelity to the papacy and said the priest's service is not that of a social worker, not that of a politician or trade unionist. Throughout their conference, the Jesuits have publicly emphasized the order's obedience to the papacy. Yet some Jesuit leaders, among them the German and Latin American delegations, are privately unhappy with the Pope's determination to rein in the Jesuit order and to steer them out of active involvement in social causes. They remind reporters that their role has traditionally been the revitalization of the Church during periods when they feared the Vatican could slip behind the times. James Compton, NBC News, Vatican City.
Georgetown University campus, much like 27 other Jesuit colleges and universities in the U.S., abounds with student energy and optimism. Less immediately apparent to the casual observer is something all Jesuit universities have in common: a dedication to a brand of Christian commitment to community and service that can be largely traced to one Jesuit priest named Pedro Arrupe. September 13th, 1983. Father Pedro Arrupe makes his last formal appearance as head of the largest and one of the most prominent religious organizations in the Catholic Church. The warm reception he enjoys at his farewell fails to reveal the agonizing turmoil that has led to this day and to the election of his successor. Only those present might note the significance of small details. Kissing the hand of Father Detza, who Pope John Paul II had appointed to replace him 25 months before. The wiping of a tear by Father Vincent O'Keefe, his second in command for 18 years.
My most respected and dear Father Arupe.
The story of Pedro Arupe turns out to be of a man whose life is shaped by course-changing events in the history of the world, of the Church, and the Society of Jesus. The 1960s erupt in a different kind of explosion. Social upheavals that alter the course of world events more extensively, perhaps, than even the atomic bomb. Ecclesiastical upheavals are triggered within the Catholic Church by the election of Pope John XXIII, who throws open church windows to the winds of change. His encyclical Pacem in Terris will address not just Catholics, but all men of goodwill, demonstrating fresh openness to the world. Only 90 days after his election, he unexpectedly invites all the bishops from around the globe to gather in Rome to re-examine the stance of the Catholic Church in a changing world. This 21st Ecumenical Council, the first in almost a century, becomes a major news event.
Considered one of the most important councils in Catholic Church history, Vatican II saw 2,400 bishops and other prelates in 168 sessions from October 1962. The council produced 16 documents designed to modernize the role of the Church in world affairs.
The council would meet in 4 sessions over 4 years. Its crowning document, the Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the Modern World, would address itself without hesitation not only to the sons and daughters of the Church and to all who invoke the name of Christ, but to the whole of humanity. The council's decrees will inspire and guide Pedro Arupe as Jesuits become leaders in the implementation of the Church's modernization. Pope John XXIII dies before the council is completed and is succeeded by Pope Paul VI, who oversees the conclusion of the council. Shortly after the death of Pope John XXIII, the Superior General of the Jesuits, sometimes called the Black Pope, Father Janssens, also dies, and Jesuits from around the world gather to elect his successor. Among the gathering Jesuits was the president of Fordham University, Father Vincent O'Keefe.
In 1965, we had what we call a general congregation. This is our highest legislative body in the society. And so it's a meeting of Jesuits from all around the world, Jesuits who are elected in their own province to go to the big meeting in Rome.
Immersed in the spirit of the Second Vatican Council, Jesuits face their own challenges of change. Priorities need to be examined. Commitment to justice rises for special consideration. On the third ballot, the General Congregation elects Pedro Arupe, their Superior General, on May 22, 1965, and goes on to pass wide-ranging reforms. Arupe will be thrust unprepared into leadership that requires him to transform the ranks of nearly 30,000 Jesuits to address a new world order. To address a new world order. To address a new world order.
This war would never have been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. We owe it to Popery that we now see our land reddened with the blood of her noblest sons. Though there were great differences of opinion between the South and the North on the question of slavery, neither Jeff Davis nor any one of the leading men of the Confederacy would have dared to attack the North, had they not relied on the promises of the Jesuits, that under the mask of democracy, the money and the arms of the Roman Catholic, even the arms of France, were at their disposal if they would attack us. I pity their priests, their bishops, and the monks of Rome and the United States when the people realize that they are, in great part, responsible for the tears and the bloodshed in this war. The later, the more terrible will the retribution be. I conceal what I know on that subject from the knowledge of the nation. For if the people knew the whole truth, this war would turn into a religious war, and it would at once take a tenfold more savage and bloody character. It would become merciless, as all religious wars are. It would become a war of extermination on both sides. The Protestants of both the North and the South would surely unite to exterminate the priests and the Jesuits. If they could hear what Professor Morse has said to me of the plots made in the very city of Rome to destroy this republic, and if they could learn how the priests, the nuns, and the monks which daily and on our shores, under the pretext of preaching their religion, instructing the people in their schools, taking care of the sick in the hospitals, are nothing else but the emissaries of the Pope, of Napoleon, and the other despots of Europe to undermine our institutions, alienate the hearts of our people from our Constitution and our laws, destroy our schools, and prepare a reign of anarchy here as they have done in Ireland, Mexico, Spain, and wherever else there are people who want to be free, etc. Abraham Lincoln.